One bullet can change everything. One card turned wrong, one drink too many in the wrong saloon. You think you know the Wild West. You have seen the movies, the quick draws at high noon, the noble sheriffs, the villains in black hats. But that mythology was built on a foundation of something far more chaotic, far more desperate, and far more human than any Hollywood studio ever dared to show you. This is not a story about heroes. This is a story about survival, about what happens when law exists only as a rumor, when justice lives and dies at the end of a revolver, and when every sunrise might be your last. Welcome to 24 Hours in a Lawless Frontier Town. Welcome to the edge of civilization itself. The year is 1876. The place could be Tombstone, Deadwood, Dodge City, or any of 100 settlements that sprang up across the American frontier like fever blisters on the face of the continent. These towns shared a common DNA. They were born from gold, silver, cattle, or the iron rails of progress, and they attracted a very specific kind of human being: the desperate, the ambitious, the violent, the dreamers who had nothing left to lose. By some estimates, the murder rate in these frontier towns exceeded that of modern war zones. In Dodge City during its peak years, a man was more likely to die from a gunshot wound than from disease. Think about that. In an era before antibiotics, before modern sanitation, before any real understanding of how illness spread, it was still more dangerous to walk into the wrong saloon than to drink contaminated water. The population of these towns fluctuated wildly. Thousands would arrive during a gold rush or cattle drive, then vanish like morning mist when the money dried up. Deadwood swelled to nearly 5,000 souls in 1876, most of them men, most of them armed, most of them operating under the assumption that tomorrow was not guaranteed. And yet these same chaotic, violent, lawless places would eventually become the foundation of the American West as we know it. From this crucible of blood and ambition emerged the mythology of a nation. The question is, what was it actually like to live through a single day in one of these places? Let us find out. 4 in the morning. The sky is still black, but the town is not silent. It never truly sleeps. From the gambling halls comes the sound of cards being shuffled, of coins being counted, of arguments that have been simmering for hours, finally reaching their boiling point. Somewhere in the darkness, a piano player who started his shift 12 hours ago is still mechanically working through the same tired melodies, his fingers moving from muscle memory alone. The air smells of horse manure, wood smoke, and something else. Something sweet and rotten that you cannot quite identify. Open sewage runs in trenches down the middle of the main street. There is no sanitation system. There is no running water. There is no electricity. The only light comes from oil lamps and candles, creating pools of yellow warmth in an ocean of darkness. In the tent cities on the outskirts of town, prospectors and drifters sleep in canvas shelters that offer almost no protection from the elements. In summer, these tents become suffocating ovens. In winter, men freeze to death in their sleep, but proper lodging costs money, and most of the people who come to these towns arrive with nothing but their hope and their hunger. Could you sleep knowing that the person in the next tent might decide your boots are worth killing for? The women who work in the dance halls and brothels are finishing their shifts. Contrary to popular belief, these were not all victims of circumstance. Some were entrepreneurs who saw an opportunity in a world where women had few options for economic independence. They charged premium prices for companionship, for conversation, for the illusion of intimacy in a place where genuine human connection was in desperately short supply. But make no mistake, this was survival work. The violence they witnessed and experienced rarely made it into the history books. By 5 in the morning, the first hints of light are appearing on the eastern horizon. The town begins to stir in earnest. A Chinese cook in one of the mining camps has been awake for an hour already, preparing breakfast for 50 men who will expect their food hot and ready the moment they wake. Chinese immigrants made up a significant portion of the frontier workforce, taking jobs that others considered beneath them. enduring discrimination that would be unimaginable by modern standards, and building communities that would persist despite every attempt to drive them out. What would you do if you traveled thousands of miles to find opportunity, only to discover that the promised land considered you less than human? The livery stable operators are feeding and watering the horses. In a frontier town, horses are not just transportation. They are currency, they are status symbols, and they are the difference between life and death. A man on foot in the wilderness is a dead man walking. Horse theft is often punished more severely than murder, because stealing a man's horse is essentially condemning him to death. By 6 in the morning, the sun has cleared the horizon, and the town is revealed in all its ramshackle glory. Main Street is perhaps a quarter-mile long, lined with wooden buildings that were constructed in haste and with no expectation of permanence. False fronts make single-story structures appear more impressive than they are. Signs advertise goods and services in hand-painted letters. General store, assay office, blacksmith, undertaker. The undertaker is already at work. There are always bodies to deal with. Last night produced 2 shooting victims, one man who died of exposure and an unidentified corpse that washed up in the creek. Coffins are expensive, so most burials are simple affairs. A hole in the ground, a few words if anyone cares enough to say them, and then the business of living continues. The morning brings the respectable citizens out of their homes. These are the shopkeepers, the clerks, the wives and children who represent civilization's tentative foothold in this chaos. They move quickly, eyes forward, careful not to make contact with the rougher elements who are still filtering back to their lodgings after a night of excess. Because here is the truth about frontier towns that the mythology often obscures. Most people who lived in them were not gunslingers or outlaws. They were ordinary people trying to make a living in extraordinary circumstances. They were the merchants who sold supplies at inflated prices because everything had to be shipped hundreds of miles. They were the teachers who held classes in whatever space they could find. They were the doctors who practiced medicine with limited supplies and even more limited knowledge. By 7 in the morning, the town is fully awake, and the daily negotiation between order and chaos has begun. The sheriff, if there is one, makes his presence known. But what did that title actually mean in a place like this? In many frontier towns, law enforcement was essentially a form of sanctioned violence. The sheriff or marshal was simply the man who was better at killing than the people he was supposed to control. Wyatt Earp, the legendary lawman of Dodge City and Tombstone, was also a gambler, a possible pimp, and a participant in activities that would be considered criminal by any modern standard. The line between lawman and outlaw was often invisible. The badge meant you had official permission to use force. It did not necessarily mean you had any interest in justice. By 8 in the morning, the businesses are open and commerce is underway. And here we need to understand something fundamental about the economics of the frontier. Everything costs more, a lot more. The law of supply and demand operates with brutal efficiency when supply has to travel 1,000 miles by wagon, and demand is backed by freshly mined gold. A single egg might cost what a worker back east would earn in an hour. Coffee, whiskey, ammunition, fabric, tools, medicine. Everything carries a premium that reflects the difficulty of getting it here. The merchants who master this supply chain become wealthy. The prospectors who find gold often lose it just as quickly to these same merchants. The saloons begin serving alcohol early. In some establishments, the bar never closes. Whiskey is often watered down or adulterated with substances designed to make it more potent or more addictive. Laudanum, tobacco juice, and other additives were common. Men who thought they were drinking bourbon were sometimes consuming poison. And they drank anyway. They drank because the work was brutal and the uncertainty was constant. They drank because they were thousands of miles from anyone who loved them. They drank because tomorrow might bring fortune or death, and either way, today demanded to be numbed. Would you drink if you were there? By 9 in the morning, the serious work of the day has begun. In a mining town, Shifts of workers descend into darkness, crawling through tunnels that might collapse at any moment, breathing air thick with dust that will eventually kill them, even if the cave-ins do not. Mining was among the most dangerous occupations in human history. Men accepted these conditions because the alternative was poverty, and poverty in 19th century America meant something very different than it means today. It meant starvation. It meant watching your children die. It meant no safety net of any kind. In a cattle town, the morning brings the chaos of the stockyards. Thousands of longhorn cattle, driven hundreds of miles from Texas, are penned and processed and loaded onto trains heading east. The cowboys who drove these herds have just completed journeys of 2 months or more, sleeping on the ground, eating trail dust, crossing rivers that could sweep away man and horse alike. These cowboys are mostly young men, often teenagers, and they arrive in town with several months of wages and an urgent need to spend it. They are the economic engine that keeps the saloons and gambling halls and brothels in business. They are also the source of most of the violence. A 19-year-old with a gun and 3 months of suppressed energy is a dangerous combination. By 10 in the morning, the temperature is climbing. In summer, these frontier towns become unbearable. There is no shade, no air conditioning, no escape. Men work through the heat because the alternative is not working, and not working means not eating. Horses collapse in the streets. Dogs seek shelter under porches and refuse to move. The smell of the town intensifies until it becomes a physical presence, something you can taste as much as smell. The flies are everywhere. They swarm around the butcher shops, the outhouses, the open graves, the festering wounds of men who cannot afford a doctor. Dysentery, cholera, and typhoid move through populations that have no concept of germ theory and no infrastructure for sanitation. In some years, disease killed more frontier settlers than violence ever did. By 11 in the morning, the first conflicts of the day are beginning to escalate. A card game that started last night has produced accusations of cheating. A business deal has gone sour. Someone has looked at someone else the wrong way. In a society where honor is one of the few things a man can claim, any perceived insult demands a response. The interesting thing about frontier violence is how ritualized it often was. The quick-draw duel at high noon, while not nearly as common as movies suggest, did reflect a real cultural belief that disputes between armed men should be settled directly and publicly. This was considered more civilized than ambush or assassination, though those methods were certainly employed as well. But most frontier violence was not dueling, it was ambush. It was shooting a man in the back. It was settling scores with cowardice rather than courage, because courage gets you killed and cowardice lets you live to spend the dead man's money. How would you settle a dispute if there was no court, no judge, no law beyond the iron in your hand? By noon, the town has reached a temporary equilibrium. The morning's business is complete. The afternoon's dangers have not yet materialized. People eat what passes for lunch in these establishments. Beans, salt pork, bread if you are lucky, and coffee strong enough to dissolve a horseshoe. The wealthier citizens might enjoy better fare. Fresh beef from the stockyards, vegetables if any are available, and wine or brandy rather than rot-gut whiskey. The frontier was never truly egalitarian. Class distinctions were simply expressed differently. Instead of inherited titles, it was money that separated the powerful from the powerless. And money could be made quickly here, by luck or skill or ruthlessness. By 1 in the afternoon, the children of the town are at whatever passes for school. Education on the frontier was sporadic and often inadequate, but it existed. Parents understood that their children would need skills beyond shooting and riding to succeed in the world that was coming. Teachers, often young women from the East, accepted positions in these dangerous places because the pay was better and because they believed in the transformative power of knowledge. These teachers became community figures, respected even by the roughest elements. A man who would shoot another man over a card game might tip his hat to the schoolmarm and watch his language in her presence. It was one of the frontier's many contradictions. By 2 in the afternoon, the heat has peaked, and anyone with sense has retreated indoors. The saloons fill with men escaping the sun, starting their afternoon drinking early. The gambling tables are active again. Faro, poker, Monte, and a dozen other games provide entertainment for men with money to lose and time to kill. Professional gamblers work these towns like farmers work fields. They understood the mathematics of their trade. They knew how to read people, how to cheat without getting caught, and when to fold and walk away. The best of them became wealthy. The ones who made mistakes became corpses. By 3 in the afternoon, the daily stage arrives, bringing mail, news, and new arrivals. The stagecoach was a lifeline connecting frontier towns to the outside world. News from the east was weeks or months old by the time it arrived, but it was devoured nonetheless. Who had been elected president? What was happening in the ongoing wars against the native tribes? Had anyone back home died, been married, or given birth? The new arrivals step off the stage into a world that probably shocked them, no matter what they had been told. Nothing prepares you for the reality of a frontier town. The noise, the smell, the visible weapons, the sense that the normal rules have been suspended indefinitely. By 4 in the afternoon, the day shift is ending for some workers and the town begins to transition into its evening configuration. The respectable citizens are preparing to retreat to their homes, to barricade themselves against whatever the night might bring. The less respectable citizens are just getting started. More cowboys arrive from the trail. More miners emerge from the darkness underground. More gamblers set up their tables, and more women prepare for the demands of the evening trade. The town takes a collective breath before plunging into its most dangerous hours. By 5 in the afternoon, the first serious trouble of the day erupts. A dispute over a prostitute, a card game, a horse, or simply a perceived insult escalates beyond the point of verbal resolution. Somewhere in town, shots are fired. Someone falls, someone runs. The witnesses scatter because being a witness in a frontier town means being asked questions, and being asked questions means taking sides, and taking sides means making enemies. The body is dealt with quickly or left where it falls, depending on who the victim was and whether anyone cares enough to intervene. Justice, if it comes at all, will be swift and brutal. A vigilance committee might form, or the perpetrator might simply disappear into the vastness of the frontier, starting over in another town where no one knows his name or his crimes. By 6 in the evening, dinner is being served in the hotels and eating establishments. This is perhaps the most civilized hour in a frontier town. Families gather, business is discussed. For a brief window, it almost resembles a normal community. But listen carefully. Beneath the conversation and the clatter of dishes, there is a tension that never quite dissipates. Everyone knows what is coming. The night belongs to different forces than the day. By 7 in the evening, the sun is setting and the lamps are being lit. The contrast between the pools of light and the surrounding darkness creates a world of shadows and uncertainty. A man walking from one saloon to another passes through areas of complete blackness where anything might happen. By 8 in the evening, the entertainment is in full swing. The dance halls are crowded with men paying for the privilege of dancing with women who are paid to pretend they enjoy it. The music is loud, the laughter is forced, and the undercurrent of desperation is palpable. These women, the hurdy-gurdy girls and dance hall hostesses, occupied a strange middle ground in frontier society. They were not prostitutes technically, though the line was often blurred. They provided companionship and the illusion of romance to men who had none. They made excellent money by the standards of the time, and they were treated with contempt by the respectable women who had the luxury of virtue. By 9 in the evening, the serious gambling has begun. The stakes rise as the night deepens. Men who arrived in town with the earnings of months of dangerous labor are betting it all on the turn of a card. Some will walk away rich. Most will walk away with nothing. A few will not walk away at all. Would you risk everything you have on a single hand? They did. They did it every night because the alternative was the slow grind of poverty, and at least gambling offered the possibility of transformation. By 10 in the evening, the alcohol has been flowing for hours and inhibitions have dissolved entirely. Arguments that simmered during the day are now boiling over. Old grudges resurface, new offenses are committed. The ratio of armed men to sober men has inverted, and the consequences are predictable. In the course of an average evening in a lawless frontier town, there would be multiple fistfights, at least one knife fight, and a reasonable probability of gunfire. The wounded were treated if they could pay and left to their fate if they could not. The dead were added to the undertaker's morning workload. By 11 in the evening, some men have retreated to bed, too drunk or too broke to continue. Others are just finding their rhythm. The night has its own economy, its own social structure, and its own rules. By midnight, the town has reached its maximum level of chaos. The respectable citizens are barricaded in their homes, listening to the sounds of revelry and violence filtering through their walls. The children are trying to sleep despite the noise. The women who married frontier men are wondering whether this was the bargain they thought they were making. And somewhere in the darkness, someone is making a decision that will change lives. A trigger is being pulled. A card is being dealt. A claim is being jumped. A deal is being struck. The frontier creates and destroys fortunes in hours, not years. 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning. The activity slowly winds down. Not because anyone has had enough, but because the human body eventually demands rest. Men collapse where they fall, in alleys and stables, in the arms of women who will take their remaining money while they sleep. 3 in the morning, and we are back where we started. The cycle complete. The town still standing somehow, despite every force working to tear it apart. This was life on the frontier. This was the reality behind the mythology. Not noble lawmen and honorable outlaws, but ordinary human beings trying to survive in conditions that would break most of us. Here is what haunts me about this history. These people were not different from us. They were not braver or tougher or more resilient by nature. They were shaped by their circumstances, just as we are shaped by ours. Put us in their world, and we would make the same desperate choices. Put them in our world and they would be equally bewildered by its complexities. The frontier was a pressure cooker that revealed something fundamental about human nature. Given the right conditions, we are capable of extraordinary violence. We are also capable of extraordinary cooperation. We can build communities in the most hostile environments. We can maintain systems of trade and education and medicine, even when everything is trying to fall apart. The lawless frontier towns eventually became lawful. The vigilance committees gave way to real courts. The gunfighters aged out or were killed out, replaced by lawyers and bureaucrats. The Wild West was tamed, not by heroes, but by time and economics and the slow accumulation of consequences. But it was not completely tamed. The frontier spirit, the willingness to risk everything on uncertain ventures, the suspicion of authority, the belief that a person can remake themselves through will and effort alone, these things persist in the American character to this day. Does this feel like ancient history to you, or does it feel uncomfortably familiar? The gap between civilization and chaos is thinner than we like to believe. Remove the institutions we take for granted, the police and courts and social services, and how long before we find ourselves making the same calculations those frontier people made? How long before we are carrying weapons for protection, forming alliances for survival, and trusting no one outside our immediate circle? The Wild West is not as far away as we think. It is always there, waiting beneath the surface, ready to emerge whenever the structures that contain it weaken. What would you do if you found yourself in a world without rules? Would you become the sheriff or the outlaw, the merchant or the gambler? Would you survive? I am Christopher, and I believe that history is not something that happened to other people in other times. It is the story of who we are and who we might become. Every person who walked those dusty streets, who survived those dangerous nights, who built something lasting out of chaos and violence. They are our ancestors in spirit, if not in blood. Their struggles echo in our own. Until next time, remember that the frontier never really closed, it just moved. It is out there now, in places we have not yet named, in challenges we have not yet faced, in the darkness at the edge of whatever light we have managed to create. Sleep well tonight. Tomorrow, the sun rises on another day of building and breaking and beginning again. That is the human story. That is our story. And it continues.